Hello and welcome to the driver of the weekend video for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Hopefully you have come from any one of my race weekend data analysis videos, be it the practice edition, the qualifying edition, or the slightly longer race edition instead. If not, I'll pop a little link to all of those videos in the card in the corner. But today we are going to be breaking down my mathematical, fully data-derived categories for the driver of the weekend, looking at the driver of practice, the driver of qualifying, and the driver of the race, then mushing all of those together and see who performed the best. And then at the end of this slightly short video, I'll be comparing that to my driver rankings that I made post-race, and then I've collected all of the audience rankings that you gave on that video as well through that Google Docs document, and we will see how each one compares from the data derived to my opinions to your opinions. So without further ado, let's take a look at the driver of the weekend, and we start with the driver of practice. And this goes from left to right. The higher or the closer to 20, your score, the better. The lower to 0, the worse you are. And it was Max Verstappen who was declared the best driver of practice from Esteban Ocon. And then Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Mick Schumacher, Carlos Sainz, Norris, Giovinazzi, Hamilton, Bottas in the middle as well. Then Raikkonen, Mazepin, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Vettel, Latifi, Alonso, Tsunoda and Perez. Now, if you would like an explanation as to all of these categories, I do have a 3-part series explaining all of the maths of exactly how I calculate this, and again, I'll pop those in a card in the corner. But with the practice driver of the day all concluded, we'll take a look at the qualifying driver of the day, and this puts Fernando Alonso at the top. From Charles Leclerc, from Max Verstappen, the pole man himself, just half a point behind Alonso, and then very close behind him was Lewis Hamilton. Then came Lance Stroll, actually, who made it into the top 10 for Aston Martin. Then Giovinazzi, Pierre Gasly, Mick Schumacher once again doing really well. Then George Russell, the two McLarens, Vettel, Bottas, Tsunoda, Raikkonen, Sainz, Mazepin, Latifi, Perez, all the way down near the bottom, and then Ocon well down at the bottom as well. Now, each of these categories takes into account performances against your teammate and also your own individual performances, so there is a nice equal balance between how well you performed against your teammate and how well you performed against yourself. But with the qualifying driver of the day done and dusted, we take a look at the driver of the race. Now, this surprisingly puts Mick Schumacher as the race driver of the day. Now, there is some small teething issues, just some very small teething issues with this driver of the day for the race in particular, as the majority of the categories take into account averages across the whole season. Round 1, I obviously have 0 averages to take. So there are a couple categories that do look at things like standard deviation, positional gain from start to end, etc., where Mick just happened to excel. Whereas every other category looks at averages and comparing average data across the whole season, which I just don't have access to as of round 1. However, this will fix itself for round number 2. So the race one, it's not entirely accurate for round number 1, but for round 2, it will be. It has, however, put Max Verstappen P2 man in P2 for the race driver of the day, then Lando Norris as well in P3, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Valtteri Bottas, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon, Kimi Raikkonen and Hamilton all so very close, separated by just 0.1 of a point for 4 cars as well. Then we've also got Giovinazzi, Leclerc, Ricciardo and Latifi all separated by just 1 point. And then finally we've got Alonso, Gasly, Perez, Vettel and then Mazepin on nothing, as there is no race data to take from him at all. And so collating all of these ranks, I can determine the driver of the weekend from my data-derived categories. We take 5% of the practice score, we take 30% of the qualifying score, and 65% of the race score, and we pull up these results here. 16.7 out of 20 for Max Verstappen. He is the driver of the weekend for Bahrain. Then comes Mick Schumacher, but like I said, it's a little bit on the teething side for round number 1. This will be fixed for round number 2. Then we've got Lance Stroll, George Russell, Lando Norris, then the two Mercedes, Carlos Sainz, Kimi Raikkonen, Tsunoda, Leclerc, Giovinazzi, Ocon, Ricciardo, Alonso, Gasly, Latifi, Perez, Vettel and Marzipan at the back. Now, I'm sure lots of people are going to absolutely 100% disagree with this order, and I fully respect that. For round number 1, even I disagree with this, and I made this. So yeah, round number 1, it's a little bit on the iffy side, but round number 2, trust me, it will be fixed. However, that's in 3 weeks' time. But now, if we actually compare each of these results, if I just pull up the driver or the data-derived ranks so far, we've put Max Verstappen as number 1, then Mick Schumacher as number 2, then Lance Stroll, etc, etc, etc. And then if we remind you of my ranks from the video that I dropped on Sunday, I put Lewis Hamilton as P1, joint with Max Verstappen, and then I put Lando Norris, Valtteri Bottas, Leclerc, Perez, Alonso, etc, 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 with Mazepin at the bottom. And comparing these two, they're actually very, very different. They're honestly completely different. Apart from the top couple and the bottom couple, the midfield is just completely different. Now, for the audience, I had 21 responses to my little Google Docs form, which I put out on the video on Sunday, which is absolutely awesome. However, of those 21, there was just a couple of people that, as I was looking through each individual ones, that some people had put everybody as all ones. Some people had also put everybody as all 20s. So I then had to knock off the bottom 10% and the top 10% of each of the scores so I could exclude all of those outliers. However, Mazepin still received 220 scores, even after knocking off the top 20%. So there are some people that are just taking the piss with it, which, yeah, whatever, I can't exclude all of those. I don't want to just exclude all of the data values. So I'm going to knock off the top 10% and the bottom 10% of each of the audience scores. And so if we take a look at those, you have declared it was Lewis Hamilton was the driver of the weekend, just ahead of Max Verstappen. Then you actually put Sebastian Vettel in P3, then Carlos Sainz P4, Sergio Perez P5, Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris only P8, ahead of Lance Stroll, George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda, Gasly, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Ricciardo, Ocon, Schumacher, which is just completely different to what my data said, and then Fernando Alonso, you put him P19, scoring 6.8 on average over, I think it was about 16 or 17 audience ranks that I averaged out, and then Nikita Mazepin at the bottom. And there we go, there is the driver of the weekend categories from my fully data-derived versions, and then the comparisons between my opinions and also your guys' opinions. I'll be running this series exactly the same as this for the Imola Grand Prix weekend, so make sure you stick around for that in 3 weeks' time and get involved with all of the audience engagements. But that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.